Morai Rabotai, continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, Hilchot Tefillah, Siman Petet, and we're still in the middle of Seif Gimel on Daf Kuf Yutet, going to Kuf Chaf in the regular prints of Mishna Berura. And as we saw, Maran writes, based on the Gemara in Daf Yudalet in Masachat Brachot, that a person cannot do his own personal needs before davening to Hashem, and part and parcel of that is velo le'echol velo lishtot. You cannot eat or you cannot drink before tefillah. Aval mayim mutar, but water will be allowed to drink before tefillah. Now, we mentioned already that you can't go on a path, and that was the last thing that we discussed. But one example that Rabbi Shaul mentions his Talmidim in Or Letzion is that if you're traveling, let's say from north of Eretz Yisrael or south of Eretz Yisrael, going to Kotel HaMa'aravi to daven. So that's a travel, and it could be sometimes a long travel. But going to Kotel HaMa'aravi, the whole purpose of the Nisi'ah is for davening. So therefore, that's not considered necessarily a problem, because that's for the Kavod Tefillah, is not for your personal need. And that brings us really to the second topic over here of eating and drinking, to which the Mishnah Berura says in Sif Katan Chaf Aleph, Ve'ha'over al zeh alav ha'katuv omer. The Gemara says this in Masachet Brachot of Yud Amud Bet, that a person that first eats and then davens, Hashem says, V'oti shtachta achare gavecha, you threw me in your back as though I'm not important. The pasuk in Melachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, that even after he takes care of his own selfish things and his arrogance, then he accepts the yoke of Hashem, which is not it's not a positive thing. There's another pasuk in Vayikra of Lo Tochlu Al Adam that the Gemara also attaches this to that pasuk. Lo tochlu kodem shitpalelu al dimchem. Do not eat until you daven on your life first. Va'afilu teima be'alma asur. Even just tasting a food by itself is asur. Whereas sometimes you have teima that will be fine. Over here, even teima be'alma would be a problem. Now, Kaf Chaim writes that even though that this isur mikar hadin is only before you daven Shemona Esrei. When we talk about eating before tefillah, is eating before you daven Shemona Esrei. That's the tefillah. But says the Kaf Chaim, lechatchila, a person should stay away from eating until you finish Adon Shabeach, the old tefillah. Lechatchila, don't pause in the middle of tefillah. We spoke about this earlier on in Siman Nun Bet, especially when we spoke about the build-up of the structure of tefillah based on Chokhmat HaKabbalah, how you ascend to the four olamot, going from the lower ones of Olam HaAsiyah all the way until Olam HaAsilut, but then also descending order afterwards, with every Kaddish being an elevator to take you up and down in the ascending and descending order, up to Shemona Esrei and then down to Adon Shabeach. And based on that, it's important not to switch any of that order or be mafsik, stop in the middle. Therefore, says the Kaf Chaim, lechatchila, a person should not eat until after Adon Shabeach. Actually, in Sfirat HaOmer, when it comes to that, we all know that Ashkenazim, their minhag is that they say Sfirat HaOmer before Adon Shabeach. So Rabbi Yaakov Hillel, in Vayashavayam, in Siman Hey, he has a tshuva, I believe is there, that he actually was asked, what does a Bachur Yeshiva do when he's Faradi in learning in the Ashkenazi Yeshiva? Should he do it with the Tzibur, or should he say Adon Shabeach and do it by himself? Of course, the pros and cons by each one of them, especially if you're going to forget after saying Adon Shabeach, then everyone leaves basically, and you forget to count. That's of course not a good thing. So he says that you should wait. Say Adon Shabeach and do it your own way. Do not follow the pattern of the yeshiva, because these things, again, are Sulamot Mutzav Arza V'Rosh Magia Shemaima. These are holy things of Kedusha, and the order matters. the order of things matters, and you have to be careful not to be mafsik the order. And again, that ties back into this to this concept as well. We mentioned the Ben Ish Chai in Ben Yoyada over there in Masachet Brachot Daf Yud Amud Bet. He writes the reason that this is considered Ga'ava is because you're supposed to, based on Zohar HaKadosh, based on Divrei Ari, daven for your mezonot before every Suda. And here you are not davening, you're first eating, so that shows that you think that your mezonot comes from yourself. The concept of davening before tefillah is to show in action that you believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that gives zanum farnes mi betzekinim ad karnei re'emim, or the other way around, mi karnei re'emim ad betzekinim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that gives sustenance to everyone, and here you are going against that. That's why it's not necessarily a positive thing. Now, the Kaf HaChaim also says that the reason that this is considered achila al adam, we mentioned that the pasuk in Vayikra says lo tochlu al adam, and Chazal attach this together with the other isur from pasuk in Melachim. So Kaf HaChaim says because the person that sleeps at night is achad mishishim shel mita. Right, 1/60th of death. The neshama is mistaleket. The neshama ascends up and then comes back. We take it back every morning. So it's like lo tochlu al adam. It's like hayat hametim, right? To that aspect. So you're davening. The only bechina of nefesh stays inside a person at night. The neshama ascends up, and therefore, when you daven alidet tefillah, the thank you that you give to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is established. Therefore, you have to daven tefillah al hadam, so to speak, on your life before you eat. Now, we mentioned that Mishna Berura says even te'ima ba'alma, even tasting, whereas other places will be mutar, over here is a problem. But if you said bracha already, what do you do if you said bracha? You said bracha and then you remember, oops, I haven't davened yet. Right? You took a nice piece of kugel and you said bracha, and then you're like, oh, I haven't davened yet. Can you eat it or not? So Ham Obadiah says you could eat it. You could not eat it, but you could take a little bite, enough to swallow, and so you stop. Why? Because according to his understanding of Shitat Rambam and Marash Charuch in Siman Reshtet Vav, the bracha she'ena sricha, a bracha that's not needed, is considered tantamount to bracha labatala, which is a isur deoraita of lo tisat sheva shem lashav, right? Therefore, you have a isur deoraita. The other one is at most the rabbanan. So therefore, that trumps the isur of eating before te'ima, before tefillah. So have a little bite, and that would be good. Same machloket is for a regular Tanit. We're not talking about Tisha B'Av or Tanit of Yom Kippur, of course, but regular Tanit, Shva Sever Tammuz, morning you wake up, you forget that's Tanit day, or during the day you forget, and you say Sha'akol, Niya Bidvaro, and then you say, oops, today is fast day. So Haravadia says, take a little sip, and then stop, because that's the Oraita, this is the Rabbanan, and the Oraita trumps the Rabbanan. The Ashkenazim, the general minhag of the Ashkenaz is that you don't. You just say Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto L'Olam Va'ed, and you don't drink anything. You let the bracha be. Why? Because they paskin like the Rama, who paskins like the Rosh and the Tosafot, that bracha she'ena sricha is not tantamount to bracha lebatala. It's not the same thing. Bracha she'ena sricha is isur darabanan, because you're mentioning Hashem's name not in vain, but in context of blessing, in context of bracha. That's only Isur Darabanan. Isur Darabanan you could fix by saying a shevach afterwards of saying Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto L'Olam Va'ed, and that would be sufficient to fix the problem. Don't drink, don't break your fast. Right? So here is a similar thing. Now, Rav Moshe Levi, alav shalom, in Birkat Hashem, he has 5 halakim of Birkat Hashem, now, depending on how you count them. So the halakim of Birkat Hashem, he has a fundamental argument, and he understands that here in this case, it would not be necessarily a bracha lebatala, and therefore he's a little bit more lenient conceptually in this area. So even within the Sephardi poskim, there is some level of machloket to be had, but nevertheless, that's something very interesting to keep in mind, that even te'ima is asur, says the Mishnah Berura. It's not just sitting and eating a whole meal, but even te'ima ba'alma, even little tasting would be considered an isur. Now, we said that mayim is mutar, right? That water would be mutar, and Kaf HaChaim, aligned with his lots of chumrot in this siman, he writes that even water, if you could refrain from having from alot hashachar on, even that tavo alav bracha, a level of chumrah. It doesn't say that that's a problem. It's not a problem, but midat chasidut, that you have nothing until you daven from alot hashachar on, that would be, of course, tavo alav bracha. But he also says that if you're thirsty and if you're tired, and he adds to, you want to sit and learn, and he adds to your thing, it's mutar. The Perei Yoetz writes, Rabbi Eliezer Popov, one of the tremendous Sadiqim and Chachamim of Turkey. He's known for his Sefer Perei Yoetz, but he was a tremendous Tamei Chacham. He wrote a Shelot Utshuvot Perei Yoetz also, and he also has Sfarim Ashas, Orot Elim. He has a Sefer Halachah, or a Chaim al Yoredeah, called Chesed La'alafim, which is mentioned almost on every page of Ben Ish Chai. Mishna followed his psak in a very serious way. Sometimes with mentioning his name, sometimes it's just the Ma'al Psak, even when he doesn't mention his name. So he writes, very interesting, he says, the people who don't wake up early in the morning, they miss the pleasure of waking up to the coffee and sitting and davening and learning early in the morning before tefillah. So, I mean, I'm assuming that he's talking really even before Alot HaShachar, the Hashkamat HaBoker for us, for some of us, Bnei Melachim, Hashkamat HaBoker means before 9 o'clock a.m. But for them, perhaps was much earlier on during the day. So that's something to keep in mind, that there is a Kaf HaChaim that says, L'chatchila, Midat Chasidut would be not to even have that. Now, the Mishnah Berura has a very interesting arichut over here on tea and coffee, sugar, creamer, milk, whether or not that's mutar, because we just said mayim ba'alma, and we will see that Mishnah Berura is going to be not so lenient on this, and the difference of that with nowadays, and what makes the difference, what sets the rule, how subjective versus objective this halacha is something that Be'ezrat Hashem we will be touching on and explaining, a fascinating talk and an area of halacha which we will touch on Be'ezrat Hashem in the days to come.